Oh, hello, little lady. Last night was wild, huh? Oh. Well, hello there, gorgeous. You're here too, huh? I can only choose one. What? So, if you watched my last video talking about the similarities, really, of the Sony a7R5 versus the Leica SL3, you saw that I'm sort of leaning towards going medium format, probably Fuji GFX, honestly, surprisingly not Hasselblad, but I'll make another video about that soon. And then I need kind of an everyday carry, fun shooting around with friends. If someone needs a quick, digital set or something for Instagram really quick, or even maybe like a digital headshot, something smaller and lighter for that, where I don't need the beef and the file size of a medium format, image. So I've been trying a whole bunch of things, and I'll make a bunch of videos about this. But I think, a really good starting point for this exploration is like the point and shoots. Okay, fixed lens cameras, no lens changes. You take it with you everywhere you go. When you go travel, you take one along with you. I've tried the Ricoh GR cameras in the past, and they're fine, but they're just not quite like tactile and fun enough for me. I may as well just use my phone, I feel like, when I'm using those cameras for the most part. Although I do like the compact nature and the sneakiness of them for street photography, but I just wanted a little more tactile nature than that. So, as you might not be surprised to hear, I tried the Leica Q3 and the Fuji X100VI. Ultimately, what I figured out is that they really are pretty different cameras, and I think they kind of have different use cases. The X100VI is really just like a fun, take it with you with your friends, shoot around, carry it with you, stick it in your pocket, true everyday carry camera. It's got the flippy screen. I like that. It's got the tactile dials, shutter speed, ISO, aperture, all at your fingertips. That's great. It makes it super fun. It's got the built-in ND filter, the super rad EVF, OVF. Just a fun camera with lots of fun quirks to explore. I think it's really funny that so many beginners are using this, and so many people are buying this as their first digital camera, because it's a pretty complicated camera. I've had 3 or 4 different times where I've been in line waiting someplace, and the person in front of me behind me has an X100VI, and then I ask them what they think about it, and they say it's their first camera, and I show them the ND filter, and I showed an Australian guy that, and he was like, "Mate, this camera's got sunnies in it." He had no idea about the ND filters and a few of the other features. So maybe I'll make a video 5 things a new X100VI user should know about their camera. But I think it's just funny that so many people are buying it because of the looks and maybe not even the functionality. But that's great. I hope they're enjoying the film simulations, shooting JPEGs. That's not really how I would use it, but I do think it's great that people are buying this camera. But that's kind of how I see this camera, is more of a beginner's fun shoot around camera. You take it everywhere you go because of its size. I've got a grip on here right now, the smaller grip, which is fantastic. But you don't need it, and I actually take it off often if I'm just taking it with me and throwing it in a bag. But for street photography and more of a whole day of shooting, it's nice to have this grip. But yeah, fun shoot around type of a camera, right? The Leica Q3, I would say, is less of kind of a fun take it with you shoot around camera. It's kind of heavy, and this lens is a honker. It tips the camera over. You can't really throw this in a pocket, and it's very noticeable. It's obvious you're taking pictures when you're carrying this thing around. No one thinks you're just pointing and shooting. It just feels serious German engineering, So, similar to the X100VI, shutter speed, aperture right at your fingertips. ISO is kind of here on this dial, this assignable dial. So you basically have the exposure triangle at your fingertips on this guy also, although I would prefer to have an ISO dial here, like on the M cameras. More of kind of a manual experience. Everything is right here. I love the macro mode thing. That is so cool. Also a tilty screen. Not quite as tilty as the X100VI, but good enough. lovely, beautiful EVF, no OVF option, unfortunately. So that's something where the X100VI definitely has a big advantage. You can get the OVF experience, even if it's not a true Leica M rangefinder experience. But the digital viewfinder on this is so nice. I don't know what Leica does to tune their electronic viewfinders, but they are the best. But, you know, it's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit heavier, it doesn't fit in a pocket. So I don't really like see this as an everyday carry camera in the same way that you can kind of like stick it in a pocket, stick it in a bag. Like I feel like if you're taking this with you, you're going to take pictures. If you take this on vacation, you're going to do photography on vacation. It's not just a camera you happen to have with you. You intentionally brought this camera with you to take pictures. If 28 millimeters is your focal length, this is probably your perfect camera. You could do all of your street work, whatever other work you do with that 28 millimeter focal length, get top of the pops, you know, SL3, Sony A7R5, you know, best in class full frame image quality out of this thing, gorgeous rendering with this lens, and be totally happy. However, I don't really like the 28 millimeter focal length. And that's pretty much the deal killer for me, is that I never quite get the results I want out of 28 millimeters. I always want something a little wider or more like a 35 millimeter. I think that's the right focal length for everyday shooting around, quick, you know, fun, out with friends photography. Plus, the X100VI, you can turn it into a 28 millimeter with a lens extender or a 50 millimeter pretty easily. You just screw that little lens extender on. No such option for this. The crop modes thing is so corny. You're just cropping a 28 millimeter. You're not changing the distortion of the rendering. Let's get real, okay? You know, both have only one card slot. So, you know, for any kind of use like a wedding where you would need dual card slots redundancy, they're both out. You know, the Q3 doesn't have a joystick. The X100VI does. Like I said, they both have flippy screens. The X100VI is the first X100 camera that has IBIS, in-body image stabilization. The Q3 does not have IBIS, despite some like confusing stuff in the literature. It has optical stabilization. There's some kind of stabilization in the lens, not in the body. Both cameras have leaf shutter, although I think it's kind of surprising. The Q3, they don't really advertise it, but it does. I think it's because it doesn't have the same shutter sync speeds as the X100VI. I'll put that up here, wherever. The X100VI has a flash. The Q3 doesn't. The X100VI has a built-in ND filter. The Q3 doesn't. But I think that the flash and the ND filters are sort of controlling for issues from the APS-C sensor in the X100VI. You know, that it can't go quite as fast with the leaf shutter, and that it also doesn't have as good low light performance as the full frame Q3. So sort of an interesting set of solutions that I think have more benefits than negatives, but just something to consider as you compare these two cameras. They both shoot video, but for sure the X100VI's video is better. I'll throw up a couple little image samples here. So if you wanted to use these guys as kind of like a small, quickie B camera, X100VI is for sure the way to go. The Q3 is just a photography instrument. It really isn't great for video. Both are beautiful cameras, gorgeous cameras. Anyone would be lucky to have either one. Anyone should be overjoyed to have either camera. But I think you really need to look at the use case. Can you get professional results out of the X100VI? Yeah, for sure. But it would be way easier to get professional results using an X-T5, you know, with interchangeable lenses, and you know, lenses that are sharper and you know, have wider apertures. The X100VI's lens is a little soft, but it stops down nicely. The Leica's lens is a Leica lens. It's the best, you know. No softness there, friends. You know, the image files coming out of the cameras, It's the typical Leica clean look, whereas the X100VI, you have the film sims, you get like a more filmy, kind of grimier, vibier look. So it sort of just depends on what you want. But you can always turn all that stuff off in post with the Fujis and get very close to the files coming out of the Q3, controlling for the much better lens on the Q3 and the slightly higher megapixel resolution of the Q3. So in conclusion, these are both amazing cameras. I almost want to keep both, speaking to the intro. I'm having trouble deciding. I don't really have to only pick one, except for my pocketbook. It thinks I have to only pick one, If I had to pick only one, I would definitely pick the X100VI for the vast majority of people. It's just a more versatile and much cheaper camera. It has, about the same or maybe even more fun factor than the Q3. And I just think that for someone looking for an everyday carry camera, the, $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000 difference, isn't worth it in most cases. However, I'm not saying the X100VI is the perfect camera for everybody in this category. I think there are a lot of people that the Q3 would work for. I just think it's a smaller percentage of people than the X100VI. The X100VI is kind of for most folks, including me probably. And then the Q3 is for a subset of people. Those people that want an everyday carry, but like are really going to use it for photography. You go on vacation, it's always a photography vacation. It's not just a side piece. It's your main shooter. It's strapped to your chest because it has to be because of the big lens. But, you're up doing this the whole time. It's not like, oh, that's a cool picture. Let me get it in my pocket. And then sometimes I don't take the picture. It's like, no, I'm here doing photography seriously. Or if you're just a 28 millimeter focal length person, you don't mind the size and weight of the Q3, for sure, that's the way to go. If you want the super clean image rendering of the Leica cameras, or you're just a Leica buff, this delivers more Leica experience than the X100VI. But I do have a caveat that the Q3 is not an M camera. This is definitely like a gateway drug to the M cameras. The manual focusing experience is cool, including the macro functionality, but it's just not the same as an M camera. I think the real reason I would probably get rid of the Q, besides the 28 millimeter focal length, which I do not like, is that every time I use it, I just wish I was focusing with an M camera. If Leica came out with an EVF interchangeable lens Q, oh boy, pack it in. We got my favorite camera on the planet, coming down the pike. If only Leica had put a 35 millimeter on this camera, we'd be having a different discussion. I would be much more interested in dealing with the size, the lack of portability, because I think that would be just a much more useful camera. Like 35 millimeter, you can do wide, you can do portrait, you can go in tight, no distortion. I just don't get the 28 millimeter focal length decision. I understand, some like old school classic street photographers, that was their preferred focal length. But dude, I live in Texas. Like, stuff is too far apart for 28 millimeters to work for me, even on the street. So, for sure, keeping the X100VI, it just sits in my bag that I take with me every day, and if I want to pull it out, I pull it out. Some days I do, some days I don't. Some days I bring other cameras too. If I need like a portrait-y, longer telephoto length, that kind of a thing, I bring both, If it's a day where I'm in the office or I'm in the studio or whatever, it may not come out. It just rolls with me in the bag, and it's small enough to do that. I think the Q3 is just a little bit too big, and it'd be cumbersome to use it that way. So, when I use the Q3, it is for intentional shooting outings, right? But I've gone on some vacations and taken just the Q3 with me, and that was really enjoyable, despite the 28 millimeter focal length. So I'm kind of thinking about still keeping the Q just for those moments, quick weekend trip. I don't want to bring a whole bunch of camera gear, and I want to do some stuff that might, benefit from the slightly better image quality of the Q3 over the X100VI. But it's like $6,000. So I'd also maybe, I go back and forth on this where maybe I want the $6,000 and I can just take the X100VI in those, scenarios, bring the wide angle teleconverter thing, wide angle converter, whatever it's called, and get that same focal length, plus one more, and it's still, a smaller package than the Q3. So I don't know. If someone wants to buy the Q3, reach out. That'll help solve my problem. But, so I guess this is one where maybe I'll do a follow-up video once I make my decision. But just wanted to kind of give my quick thoughts here, and love to get your thoughts in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.